Hello, this is Adrian from my channel, Random Drop, and this week we got to talk about RedFall. So, hey, I played the game on launch, co-op, 4 players, all different characters and classes. Overall, hey, I had a good time. But the game has an incredible amount of glaring issues, and in this video I kind of want to get into that. I want to get into what actually makes a lot of this game feel not so great. And then maybe give some feedback at the end of like, hey, how I think I probably would have liked the game to be overall. So let's get into it.
Hey everybody, before we get started, I just wanted to say, if you enjoy our content and want to stay up to date with our videos, hit the subscribe button. It really helps the channel. Thanks. So, on to the video.
The first thing that really bothered me in the game in general was the looting. There's all these beautiful stores and environments, and the city itself is really pretty. But when you're actually like scavenging, right? Because this is kind of supposed to be a survival game. There's nothing. You find a gun here and there, and like, oh, it's different colored. Oh, it's one level higher. But that's about it, because there's no real progression system for looting, right? In Dead Island 2, for example, you would find scraps and gunpowder and all this bullshit to craft certain things and all that, or upgrade your items, upgrade your melee weapons, upgrade your guns, and so that you could progress in a way by walking around looting shit. So it would be exciting to open a door and find stuff behind it, or find a secret crevice where there's a bunch of stuff. But here, not really. Like, it's more like you got your lockpicks, you got your health packs, and you got your the hacking items, and then you hack some stuff to get a little bit of money and some guns. And like, the guns are for the most part not interesting in terms of what you're looting, and it's very random. So really, there's no like good flow to it, right? You're just kind of walking around these buildings aimlessly, and you find a cool thing every now and then. The next thing I want to talk about is the mission structure. It's really annoying that you have to gather all, and this is more of a multiplayer thing, but you have to gather all your friends in the same area to start a mission. Now, Dead Island did do a thing like that, but you hit K and you instantly teleport there. But it also just didn't happen too often, right? It was more of a case it would happen at certain points rather than to start this whole mission, right? And you always have to go back to this place and start the mission. They're never like spread out in the zones or area. But so far the missions have been, you show up to a place and destroy a thing or kill a guy or collect the thing, right? And the like slideshow cutscenes are a joke, but there's just kind of nothing behind them, nothing fun or zany, because they're kind of soulless in a lot of ways. Like, there's nothing happening in these places. Like, we went to a warehouse where we were supposed to save some people, and like a radio station where we're like supposed to like kill some radio person. I don't fucking know, like turn off some signal or something like that. And again, there's just kind of, it felt like a checkbox, and there felt like there was no real purpose behind it. And maybe we picked the worst of the 3 missions because there's kind of like a branch and you can pick 3 different missions. But yeah, it's structured very oddly, I would say. Especially as well with like the side missions and stuff. You pick up a side mission, everyone has to be there, and then we all walk out and shit like that. And then there is the lack of progression between players. Only the host actually progresses in any way, which is a really odd fucking choice. I really don't know who made this decision or what, but no one wants to go back and replay the thing they just replayed, especially these beginning missions, right? And so, you keep all your items and loot and stuff, but any like story progression is completely gone. Structurally, the missions aren't that great, and the lack of story prog between co-op sessions is like inconvenient as shit. Like, I want to play now, but I have to wait on all my friends and have the host actually host it. It's just such an odd choice, and there's no real reason to it. Hey, just don't do that. Let people either have the choice or something at least. But doing it this way makes absolutely no sense. The next point is the incredibly dumb AI. The AI is probably the dumbest AI I've seen in a very, very long time. Very dumb. And it seems like they grabbed the AI, for example, from one of their stealth games, Dishonored or something like that. Because those guys are really dumb in that game too. They have like cones of vision of like 50 degrees or something, right? They have like blinders on the side of their heads. Because you could like walk by those people crouched. And that kind of seems what happens with a lot of these mobs or NPCs, is that they lose track of you very, very quickly. And sometimes you're like standing in front of them, and lots of times they're like walking into walls and shit. And it's just, they don't move right and react right. It's a AAA game shouldn't have this bad of AI, and this problem has been solved before. But maybe the team didn't have the tech and weren't able to get the tech correctly. Like, fuck, it makes Cyberpunk AI look like this fucking incredible masterpiece, like robot AI design. Like, it's crazy how bad this AI is. But the vampires kind of ignore it because they're so overpowered, or not overpowered, but they have so many movement abilities and tracking, and it seems like they have no issues finding your person, that they just like warp and teleport to you and all that stuff. They run 100 miles per hour. So they don't need a smart AI because they're just strong in general. I think the human AIs are like a waste of time in this game, or the mobs, because they're not fun to fight at all. And the most exciting encounters are when there's a lot of vampires and you're working with your team to use the different abilities to CC them and kill them, pick them off, someone's tanking them, all that stuff. It works really great when it's actually flown together, but with the vampires, right? Because the humans, you shoot them twice in the fucking head and they're dead. They're worthless enemies, and I don't see why they were designed in such a way. Really, if I were designing this game, I would have started with human enemies, yeah, and then maybe vampires slowly trickle in. And the first vampire you fight is fucking tough as shit. And then as you go in the game, power scaling and abilities and weapons and items, vampires get easier and easier to kill and fight. And you start phasing out the humans. And then you have more interesting encounters with vampires, right? And eventually scale it that way. Because right now, this weird mixture of like humans and vampires, but the humans are really fucking stupid and bad. So really you're only fighting like two enemies. It's really weird and odd, and it's not fun. A lot of this game, you really spend around... Like, I remember there was a part in our stream where I was like, finally, an encounter where I felt like I was fighting something. Because a lot of times you would just kind of show up and pop a couple people in the head and it was over. But there was one encounter, I think we were getting a warehouse, but then we accidentally aggroed some mobs in another place, so like kind of made it even worse. But we had fun with it. It was an actual fun fight or encounter, I guess you would say. And lastly, the biggest detriment to this game, and this kind of goes back with the looting and the mission structure, is the world is absolutely empty. They ask you to go from point A to point B, and there's literally nothing to kill on the way there. Not a fucking patrol, not a random event, nothing. Most games would probably put a side quest that you could accidentally bump into so that you could maybe do that side quest on the way there. Fucking something. But me and my friends were bored, walking across the city, hoping there would be something interesting around the corner. And no, it was just more things to loot, of like another fucking gun or something. A gun that we have no one to use these fucking guns on, because there's no enemies unless it's a mission spot. They're not spread around randomly or anything like that. You think some vampires would fucking hunt you? Nothing. The vampires just stand around. They do not patrol. They do not walk around. They do not hunt you. Nothing. So walking across the city is boring as shit. It is some of the least fun I've ever had in a long time. Meanwhile, you have games like Dead Island who sprays that shit perfectly. Maybe a little too much at parts where there's a lot of zombies, but you can just fucking run past them. They're zombies. So you make the pace on your own, right? But here, there's nothing, man. There's nothing for me to do or hunt. Special mobs, mark the map with a fucking fort or something for me to blow up. Nothing. There's these like safe houses you can go and clear to make new fast travel points and mission points. But they have like one wave of mobs, and most of them are fucking humans. So you just two-shot them. It's not fun. The world needs to be filled out and more alive. There needs to be more fucking enemies wandering and rolling around, because the city is absolutely deserted, and I get that's kind of the point, but this is about like a vampire survival. Like, they could have actually just added zombie to this fucking game, because vampires can make ghouls or whatever, or you just add some fucking ghouls. I don't know, but there has to be something, because the actual encounters, there's so little of them, and they're so far apart spaced. It was like a godsend whenever they were like, hey, here's a vampire nest, you can go in there and fight some shit for once. And we're like, oh, thank God, let's go and do this. And we went in there and had fun. There was a bunch of vampires to fight. There were no fucking humans, and they came in like giant packs of vampires. So we're having to use our abilities and ults and all that stuff to get it done. And I feel like the game should be more like that in general. And maybe towards the end it starts escalating that way. But man, this is a dog shit first impression. The world is way too fucking empty. And that's like really my main pain points with the game. The empty world really got to me over time. Me and my friends were just walking to the next destination being like, there is nothing on the way over here. There's like a couple houses to fucking loot, but there's just more guns. No secret fights, nothing like that. Like, there was one time we found a vampire in a house, and it was filled with vampires. We're like, oh, that's cool. But we found out later that it's a house that you have to go to later anyways to kill, like, the neighborhood vampire. So it was just like a predestined spot anyways. Again, it frustrates me because there's a lot of... Like, this game could have been so good. If they, like, learned a lot of the lessons from Dead Island, they looked at that game and thought about it and structured it in a very similar way, it could have been really incredible and fun. But I don't know what happened with the progression of this game. I don't know if maybe two ideas were clashing or what. But this should have been an open world Left 4 Dead game. I think walking around the world in general and traversing it and how the characters interplay with each other works really well. I was a teleporter guy, so anytime we were trying to get to places, I would like set a teleport, and all my friends could jump in behind me, right? And they're like, "Oh, cool." So like I was kind of like the one leading the pack in terms of where we were going, because I had like the most free movement. I could get us up mountains and bridges and buildings and find secret nooks and crannies. It was really cool. But then there was nothing to shoot, and so I was just like, "Fucking, what are we doing here?" So yeah, I think there's such a good game, and I hope they patch it. I hope someone comes in and A Realm Reborns this motherfucker and saves it. It's very doubtful, but I do hope that at least make this game a fucking 7, man. At least get it to Dead Island 1 standards, something, and not just leave it like this. But I'm gonna play more of it. I'm gonna finish the game, but clearly from all the reviews and stuff, everyone is kind of in agreement of a lot of the main issues. And yeah, I mean, there's so many things I could say in terms of how I would structure the game. Again, like I probably would fight only humans at the start, and then vampires slowly trickle in. I think bullets and all that stuff should have been more valuable, and maybe more improvised weapons. Again, make it more of a survival thing where you're crafting and shit. You're finding gunpowder, and you're like, oh, I need to make some bullets, and stuff like that. Instead of it just being so fucking generic, man. They could have done so much more with it, but yeah, the only reason I'm so passionate about it is because there's a good game and a good premise under this, but man, like, just somewhere along the lines, things just got fucky, and sadly, we missed out on a good game. But hey, leave a comment, subscribe, let me know how you feel about Redfall in general. Am I wrong? Or what are the some things you wish they improved on or changed? And what is the biggest things detracting you? Whatever. But I will see you next time. on this channel at Random Drop. Bye bye.